theanswer.com, on the AM560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, and on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson. Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan, and in for Amy this morning is Charles Thomas, former ABC 7 political reporter.
Yep, that's me.
That's you. And Ron Johnson, senator from Wisconsin, they're north of the Cheddar Curtain, talking about the week that was. The Senate Judiciary hearing with Deputy Director of the FBI, Paul Abate, was something to behold. And a lot was asked of him with respect to these alleged tapes of conversations between ostensibly the CEO of Burisma, Ukrainian oligarch, and the Bidens, meaning Joe and Hunter. But Ron Johnson says, we don't know about the existence of these tapes, and certainly Paul Abate didn't provide any clarity. Although it was bizarre because he seemed to say at one point during his non-answers that he didn't know if the tapes existed, and then he seemed to indicate that the tapes did existed by the nature of saying, I'll go back and talk to my team about whether or not we can disclose this and that. Anyway, Ron Johnson says the main thing, and make the main thing the main thing. That's FedEx CEO Fred Smith's advice, right? Always make the main thing the main thing. That's how to succeed in business. The main thing is not the tapes, but corruption at the FBI.
But again, what I'm telling you, what we know is the corruption of the FBI and federal law enforcement. So I don't want people getting, we already know the Bidens are corrupt. The main issue here, from my standpoint, is the corruption of the FBI. And what did they do to follow up on that as they were interfering in Senator Grassley's and my investigation, the Hunter? If we would have known these things, we could have raised this issue in 2020. Joe Biden never would have been elected president. But our investigation was interfered with by the mainstream media, by our Democrat ranking members, by the FBI.
For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by Senator Bill Cassidy, U.S. Senator from Louisiana. He is in Chicago getting an award. We'll have to hear more about that as well. Senator Cassidy, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, gentlemen, thank you for having me.
Good morning.
So, do you agree with Ron Johnson's focus as well as his characterization of the FBI's corruption?
Clearly, within the FBI, there were elements that had a political agenda. Clearly. We don't know how much it permeates the FBI, but it's damaged their reputation. And it's damaged their reputation enough that people can assume the worst, and they can find enough to justify it. Now, I grew up, my gosh, these were the like epitome of law enforcement. And I can tell you, speaking to individual FBI agents, the ones I speak to are still the epitome of professionalism. But the agency has opened itself up to criticism by some of its past actions.
Well, okay, and then so what are House and Senate Republicans to do about these things? Because, of course, that one of the frustrations that fuels the suspicion is that nobody gets held accountable, even when there is documented, incontrovertible bad acts. And then you have the new crop of folks that replace the Comeys and the McCabe's and the Strocks, and they're behaving more or less the same way, it would seem, to an outsider like me.
So the House Republicans, obviously, if Democrats are in control of a chamber, they're not going to allow a full-fledged investigation with subpoenas, et cetera. They're just not, because it embarrasses their guy, and Biden is their guy. On the other hand, House Republicans have the majority, and they have initiated these investigations, and it's slow, it's a slog, but they are actually getting results. So I think you're going to see, if there are things to be revealed, you'll see those revelations over the next year and a half.
And I know you're limited on the Senate side versus what the House can do, as you just described. But from what you've seen from the Weaponization of Government Committee, from Jim Comer's House Oversight Committee, you're encouraged. You think people should be guardedly optimistic that the work of those committees will go somewhere in the direction of accountability?
Yeah, I do. Comer, obviously, and the ranking Democrat went in and looked at some FBI documents. The FBI didn't want to be more forthcoming. They've kind of leveraged that into the FBI being more forthcoming. Now it's going to be pulling out dragon's eye teeth to get some of this information, but it does seem like the House Republicans are going to be able to do it, and it won't be quick. It's going to be like the Ukrainian offensive in eastern Ukraine. But it's going to be effective, and it's going to come through.
Now
that's my cautious optimism.
Okay. Now you're both in the House and you're involved in the Senate on proposing sort of a new deal when it comes to student loan debt, as we wait for the Supreme Court to opine on the Biden gambit, and the Democrats pursue, taxpayer-funded college without qualification. So explain what I mean. I know in the House the legislation would provide some paths for relief for what they say are students who paid more than the principal and interest they originally incurred. But if they paid more than the principal and the interest they originally incurred, then they would have paid off the debt. I don't really understand that. And compare and contrast what you and your colleagues are doing in the Senate to what you're seeing in the House.
Well, a couple of things. Right now, by the way, I was born in Highland Park. I feel like I'm back in the old country, although we moved when I was less than a year. And I'm looking out over an incredible skyline of Chicago from my hotel room. Now, the way the Biden administration has set it up, they say they're forgiving student loan debt. They're not forgiving it. They're transferring it to everybody that lives and works in those buildings that I'm looking at right now. Look at yourself. You pay back your student loans. Maybe you never took them. Maybe you kind of sacrificed.
I did. Yeah. I did.
Yeah, and all they're doing is transferring it. So, and they don't correct the underlying problem. The Committee for Responsible Federal Budget says in 5 years we'll be back in the same situation. 5 years. So what we do in ours, we first recognize there's already student loan debt forgiveness programs for those who lose their job, become disabled, income falls too low, go into certain professions. We already have those programs. But what we're trying to do is correct the underlying problem, in which a kid could log on, a family could log on and say, if my child enrolls in this curriculum at this school, this is the likelihood that she will graduate in this curriculum at this school, how much she has to borrow and how much she will earn. So she has to borrow $250,000, but she's going to make $45,000 a year. Then she'll know that's a bad bargain. I shouldn't go there. I should do something else. And so we're just trying to give, and we have other tools like that where the person would know just exactly how much they're going to borrow, how long they'll have to pay it back, and how much they will pay back. We're trying to address the underlying problems.
Well, the underlying problem, it seems to me, is that the government is the dominant player in the student loan business. Why? I mean, you're subsidizing higher tuition, so why don't we stop doing that?
Yeah, well, that would be a great idea. You got to have politics is the art of the possible. We should really have even a more aggressive revamp of how we do it. But we got to start off with what we can get. And what we can get is having a transparency so that a university, which is offering a student, an offer sheet, that it's actually accurate, that they can look at it, compare it to other universities, and see which is best. Right now, they can't do that. One of our pieces of legislation would do that. Now, long term, you're right. There's a lot of stuff that we could correct. Man, you got to take a step at a time.
I understand. But since you're a medical doctor, I wanted to address one COVID issue. And that's a story that's not getting really a lot of play. This story from the Sunday Times over there across the pond in merry old England, that through FOIA and interviews with U.S. investigators, they laid out a case last weekend that we have known, we have believed, and the professionals in the space essentially can say they have known for a long time that the COVID virus originated in the Wuhan virology lab. And the Sunday Times puts together all of the requisite pieces to draw a rational conclusion that that was where the virus emanated. That was from where the virus emanated. And yet still, speaking again here of the lack of accountability, still we have Fauci and Collins and Walensky and the public health establishment trying to middle the issue. You have a D.C. press corps that largely ignores it. You have people, some of these COVIDians, calling for COVID amnesty. Let's just move on and forget everything that happened for the past 3 years. What should Republicans be doing to amplify some of what we know to be true in the wake of the last 3 years, and in the direction of a reckoning for those who purposely, clearly misled the American people in so many respects?
And the reports I read, they did have the word "could" in there. Could have originated, concluded that they could have originated. And I think that's a distinction but on the other hand, the fact that they also are reporting that the People's Liberation Army was the one who's most likely directing the research is, of course, incredibly important.
Right.
So there's going to be opportunities. I'm the lead Republican on the health, education, labor, and pension. There is going to be the new nominee for the NIH. She will come before us. And there will be Republicans who are pressing her and making their vote for her contingent on openness about what the NIH funded via maybe third parties on gain-of-function research. Now, that will be on the Senate side. On the House side, I know they're doing things. Transparency. We just got to get more information out there, let people draw their own conclusions. But there'll be a lot of oversight, a lot of interest. So have me back in 6 months, and we'll talk about it some more.
Well, and the new the nominee that's going to replace Walensky for CDC director, I mean, she has made some pronouncements. She did during the thrust of the pandemic that, are really telling, and perhaps she should be queried about as well. She's basically saying, she would call other people similarly situated as public health professionals in their states. When are you going to lift the mask mandate? Or when are you going to impose it? Okay, well, I'll do it. If you're going to do it Monday, then I'll do it Monday. That doesn't sound like professionals following the science and data to me. It sounds like groupthink and political sequencing.
There was a lot of groupthink during that process. And by the way, I'll also fault the executive branches. The executive branches are the ones with the responsibility of weighing the negative effect upon the children from their isolation, the fact that they were going to be away from school and lose learning opportunity, and you knew that would fall upon the most vulnerable. That is absolutely the case. My wife is the head of a public charter school for children with dyslexia. Dyslexics really suffered during that period, speaking to the children with dyslexia and other needs. And we can go down the list. Inner city kids did the worst, on and on. So we knew that was going to happen. We knew that there would be social ills that would result. People were predictably going to drink more alcohol because they were sitting by themselves all the time. So the politicians really should have balanced that. There was groupthink among the public health people. I'll also say there's too much deference given to them by others.
All right. He is Senator Bill Cassidy, U.S. Senator, Republican from Louisiana. Enjoy your time back home, so to speak, Dr. Cassidy, Senator Cassidy. Thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And he joined us on the Turnkey.Pro answer line.
It's like a hot, steaming cup of information to start your day. It's Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560, The Answer.
Signature Bank is Chicago's fastest growing independently owned business bank. Your business and your money are in good hands with Signature Bank. I'm Dan Proft, and I know this because Signature Bank is my business bank.
Hi, I'm Dan Migatz, co-owner and CFO of AM Woodland Outdoor Design in Mundelein, and a new customer of Signature Bank. We specialize in the creative design and construction of outdoor living spaces, providing our residential and commercial customers first-in-class landscaping services. Our company was founded as a one-man operation, and today has grown into a multifaceted, one-stop